We live today in a very competitive world. If you're a traditional business, whether that's a marketing agency, a lawyer, running a chain of shops, you're facing competition. And one of the reasons why you're facing so much competition is because everybody in your market is doing pretty much the same thing in the same way. So, for example, if you're a lawyer, you've got a number of highly qualified lawyers, you're going to court, you're solving the cases in a similar way, using similar software, working in similar types of office, paying similar types of people, similar amounts of money. And this makes it very difficult to outcompete other people in the market. You might be 10, 20, 50% better, but there isn't a significant amount of pricing power in there if you're reasonably competent. And this is a huge challenge, especially when you're in a market where there are a lot of external forces coming in. And over the last few years, we've seen a huge number of forces coming and attacking traditional businesses of all sorts. I mean, whether we're talking about Brexit, whether we're talking about COVID, whether we're talking about the environmental changes, or the wave after wave of technological changes that are just coming out and hitting industry and retail and commerce one after another. A few years ago, I was talking to the Louise Stigant, managing director of Cadbury's or Mondelez, you know, the chocolate makers, and she said to me that in the world today, the pace of change is the slowest that it's going to be for the rest of my life. So as we go forward, and hopefully I'm going to have a long life, as we go forward, things are only going to get faster and more stressful if we're trying to do things in the same way. When we look back through history, we can see that we're constantly, businesses are able to do the same thing for a limited amount of time. As a business, as an estate agent, for example, you've probably done things in a similar way for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. But 50 years ago, there was a big discontinuity, and the time before that was quite different. And then there was another period of time, maybe 10, maybe 20 years, and that it was different before that. So we're always facing these big changes in an industry. But now these are coming faster and faster, and it's making it very difficult for everybody in a market to be competing, to be working in the same way. So what business model innovation is all about is it's trying to come up with different types of business model, different ways of making your business to be a success, in delighting your customers without going down the same avenue as everybody else. If you're doing the same things as everybody else, you're into a big world of competition. If you're doing something different, it's scary. For sure, it's scary. It may not work, but from the best of our understanding and knowledge, you have got a reasonable chance of surviving if you can get that right. The revenue return is a lot larger, and it's a better, safer place to be than just waiting for the waves of change to beat you down. Of course, if you're approaching retirement, if the business is a nice little earner, it can be a very good strategic move just to say, yeah, I'm not going to do anything, and I'm just going to drive it down into retirement, take cash out of the business, and if it goes down, then that's okay, because making a big change is not worth it. So looking at what is coming in the future, we're seeing perhaps 40% of all jobs in the UK are going to be automated. It's not necessarily all of the 40%, but 40% or so are going to lose some part of them. Some jobs just going to go, all of them is going to go. And this is a huge challenge. So what do we do? And I characterize it, there are two approaches that you can take. You can be the Luddite who says, I can't do anything, I don't have enough money, I don't have enough profits, I don't have the skilled staff, I don't have ... whatever it takes to go out there and compete. On the other hand, there is the innovator who says, well, yeah, for sure, I don't know enough, but that's okay, because I'm going to go out and I'm going to explore. I'm going to find out better ways to be doing things. And this is, I think, the single most important split between the people that I see. Some of them say, oh no, it's not going to work, I can't do it. Other people are constantly push, looking for the opportunities, some way to get some advantage, whether it's a small tactical advantage or a much bigger advantage by coming up with an innovative business model. So there are two ways of getting an advantage as you go forward to cope with all this change. I mean, the first one is something that I'm sure a lot of you have been doing for quite a long time, and that's going out and coming up with new products or services, making your existing products or services better, coming up with better offers, better coupons, making something more efficient, making the business more efficient, cutting out costs. The thing is, most people in the industry read most of the same things that you do, have most of the same ideas, and can see this. So even if you are the best possible person at doing this, all that it's meaning is that you're at the front of the pack, of a very fast running pack, and a pack that's running faster and faster. So you're into what they call the problem of the Red Queen. You're running as fast as you can just to stay still. The other alternative is to look at the whole business model and think, okay, how do I change it? What can I change? Where can I be looking for some innovation that's going to turn my business from doing what I do now to something totally different? I was working with a manufacturer of petrol tankers recently, and they said, Dennis, this is so competitive. We need to do something different. We want to do business model innovation. And I said, okay, that's great. And they said, but Dennis, we need to make sure that we keep on making petrol tankers because that's what we do. And it's like, okay, so how can you innovate your business model if you're still going to be doing the same thing? Okay, it's a little bit harsh on them, but this is the challenge. We're looking at what you can do or what you are doing now, blowing that up, and then trying to put the pieces back in a very different way that's going to add lots more value. So I'm imagining that a lot of you watching this have got 10, 20, 30, perhaps even 40 years of experience in your industry. You know how things work. You are the experts in the industry. And as experts, you're deeply steeped in the domain knowledge, the understanding of how things should be in that industry. And that is brilliant for competing under normal circumstances. But when you are in a world of change, in a world of disruption like we are today, you have to draw on that knowledge and do what I call a perceptual shift. You have to start looking at your industry differently. There was, about 130 years ago, a Finnish woman called Hilma A.F. Klint, K-L-I-M-T. She was an artist. She painted really, really boring pictures of cows and fields eating grass under blue skies or cloudy skies because it's Finland. And they are dreadful. Not an art critic, but I find them really boring. What's interesting is 30 years before anyone else in the world started doing this, she started drawing big blue squares and red squares and orange squares and stylized flowers. And she invented modernism, which is a totally different way of looking at the world. And what's interesting is not the art, but it's like, how did she get from painting cows to painting modernist art? What was the shift? What happened inside her brain? What did she see that nobody else in the art world saw at that point? And we can ask this about some of the companies out there. There was a small company wanted to compete in the advertising industry, and it realized that everybody in the industry thought that it was really expensive to get information about human behavior, and so they were able to charge, current people were able to charge big companies lots of money for not very good information about what the customers wanted. This small company thought, oh, we can get lots of small data about people all over the world. We can sell it back to them. And that turned into a $1 trillion business because Google had a perceptual shift about what was important in advertising. It knew everything about advertising, well, actually far less than the people in advertising, but it saw it differently. It had a perceptual shift. Uber had a similar shift when it came to taxis and ride sharing. It wasn't the first, but it saw what could happen, how it could happen, and made an argument as to why its vision could work. Apple, if we remember, was really not even a second-rate failing computer company. It was third-rate. I mean, the market share that it had was absolutely minuscule. But then Apple saw the world very differently, and it put 2 or 3 things together: the Apple, the iTunes Store, and the operating system and the content. Put them all together to come up with a very different vision of reality. It took what everybody else in the industry could see, it sort of twisted it into 3 dimensions, looked at it a little bit funnily, and then came up with something that really, really worked. And this is the essence of business model innovation. Forget about all the fluff, all the different tools, all the different techniques. This is what you really need to understand if you want to challenge, if you want to thrive in this new world of disruptive innovation, disruptive change. You'll have to use your domain knowledge as a seed, as the starting point, not the end point, because you're not an expert. You're using that knowledge as a seed, and what can you grow out of it? A lot of the time, what I recommend to clients, not quite tongue-in-cheek, is basically, go on a long walk in the country and just mull over the industry and things that can happen, and never say no to any of your ideas. Stand in a shower with your eyes closed, listening to music blasting out in your head as you're going along, and you have ideas. Do what the Babylonians did 3,500 years ago, which was think about ideas, think about possibilities, do it stone cold sober, then sit down and have exactly the same meeting with basically a bunch of pints of beer in front of you, or a bottle of vodka or schnapps or whatever your poison is, and have the same discussion absolutely blasted, because it unlocks the inhibitions. Why do we want to start being all dreamy and sort of magical thinking rather than sort of being really logical about it? Well, as I said earlier, most of your competitors in the marketplace, they've got the same domain knowledge as you, they've got the same amount of experience as you, they've probably got an MBA or been to business school, they can read the same business books, they read the same popular business books. And the result is that put most of you down to do the same sort of thing, to solve the same kind of problem. You're going to come up with similar solutions, which means that you're all really excited, and then you oversupply the market. There's a glut, and none of you get the returns that you're expecting. You're back into another horrible world of competition. Whereas if you let yourself go, start thinking about things magically, using dreaming, envisioning, seeing futures that just seem totally weird, and then start trying to work out, well, how would that work? How much value would that create? Life then becomes very, very exciting. And if you want a great book on this, have a look at Rory Sutherland, Alchemy. He's one of the directors of one of those advertising companies that got beaten by Google. But still, it's a very good book. But what you're looking for when you're doing this is not how to get 1% here, 5% there, how to increase sales by a little bit. What you're fundamentally looking for is, how do you increase customer value? That is the satisfaction that customers get from using your product or service by 10 times, by 100 times, possibly by 1,000 times, but that's possibly a bit excessive. How do you get that to happen? Because you're looking for big wins. Because if you're going for a very big win, a very big change in the amount of customer satisfaction, this does a number of things. One, it means that you're thinking bold. And if you're thinking bold, you are sort of really trying to change and get away from the competition. Secondly, that's the third. Secondly, if you're being really bold, if you're coming up with a big change, that makes it really, really difficult for your competitors, the competition, to follow you, because they're going to be thinking, this is too scary, I can't do that. And so a bunch of them are going to be left behind. And thirdly, when it's a really big, bold change, that delivers lots of benefit. I mean, think about the benefits of using Google search, for example, compared to my old Encyclopedia Britannica. I mean, it's 100 times better. I worked out with Wikipedia. Wikipedia is at least 350 times better than my old Encyclopedia Britannica, simply on ease of use. Boom. That is what you are looking for. And if you can get that, it is very, very difficult for people to catch you up. And suddenly you have a whole new industry that you own that can take you nicely away to retirement or onto your yacht or private island or whatever your dream of success happens to be. So I say, when you are focusing on business model innovation, the most important thing to be thinking about is the why. Why is this going to change your consumer's life substantially? Why is it going to change their life more, whether they're a consumer or a business, more than anything else has done in a generation? If it's not going to do that, put it on one side, play with the idea, change it, fertilize it, water it, see it grow and make it come to life. Yeah, really do not worry about how this is going to happen. The how is not particularly important, because having worked with well over 1,000 entrepreneurs, some of them have been funded by some of the smartest venture capitalists in the world, and we've grown these businesses very quickly. Some of the reason, what you've got to do is the why is way more important, because anybody can figure out how to get to the why. It's almost an engineering, it's a mechanical problem. It's very detailed, it's very complicated sometimes. If you know where you want to go, it's relatively easy to get there. If you don't know where you want to go, you end up building a road into the wilderness and it goes nowhere and it's very, very expensive. So focus on that why. Don't worry about it seeming implausible, impracticable, because your domain knowledge, as you then sort of come back and figure out the gaps, will then enable you to build your path, build your roadway to it. And for amazing ideas that change the world, there is always a lot of money out there if they are solving real problems.